Oh, it says recording.
Recording. I'm not a technology guy, but here we are doing some technology. Um, I'm grateful for you guys. Thank you for your time, and thank you for who you are. I've known each of you. I don't know when did we meet? Okay, we met in Orlando.
Yeah, a couple years ago in the YP Lounge,
Yeah,
I saw this stunning young gentleman look like a Disney character, and I decided to say hi. Man, it was a good meeting.
Disney character. Oh my god. I don't know. When did I meet you, Spence? I mean, I feel like we were connecting online way before we actually met in person.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's been years. Yeah.
So over that course of time, just from my perspective, I've just seen the two of you both show up as individuals who just show up with value, who show up with I'd say servant leadership, a caring heart, and like you're always bringing something to either plus one people, invite, I'd say bigger thinking. That's the influence that it's had on me. So maybe that's your intention, or maybe that's just like a byproduct of who you are. But just want to say thank you, express my gratitude for each of you. And then, man, like as you guys team up, I was like, like mind blown, but also like that actually makes the most sense from my perspective, right? So I would like to know how much of your story you want to share today, before the decision to team up as Kova Collective. Where did Kova start? Where did Amanda start?
So I think there's very much like two different backstories that lead to the collaboration up front. And so I guess the way we should look at it is I'll tell my portion till the meeting, and then Amanda will tell her side to the meeting. And I think the benefit is that both of our backgrounds are what is probably the benefit to the collaboration that we're experiencing now. And so I guess I'll start real quick. And if you know me, nothing is usually real quick, so I'll make it as quick as I can make it. But I'm a West Coast kid. Went to the Naval Academy, got stationed out here in Virginia Beach, Virginia for 8 years, and quickly transitioned into real estate as soon as I transferred out the military. So my first full year in real estate was 2018, but I was licensed sometime in the second or third quarter in 2017 while I was transitioning out the military. And so I would say my first 2 years in the industry were just eye opening. I was just learning. I started a small boutique brokerage here in Virginia Beach. And at the time, I didn't really know much about real estate. Nobody raises their hand to want to be a real estate professional. Maybe you grow into it as you get older, but I wanted to be a basketball player, an oceanographer, a paleontologist, the cool things, space, dinosaurs, basketball, that kind of thing. And then as I grew older and met my family and started to grow things, like real estate became a place for me to grow. So I got into real estate in 17, 18. I joined the current brokerage I'm at, which is Keller Williams, in 19, and have been here ever since. And in that journey, my first 2 years, I was a producer, right? Like most of us, we earned the top producer recognition, rookie of the year. I did all of those things. And I think I learned real estate, how to do it, my first 2 years. And then when I joined Keller Williams, it's probably the start, or the seed is planted on more entrepreneurship and business growth. And it was at that time I started to build a small team. I then took a leadership position as a team leader or an office manager inside of a brokerage. And then I ended up buying that brokerage. And during that time, I also partnered with another leading real estate leader in the area. And so in that journey, I went from a solo agent to a top producer to a leadership position to growing a small team to a mega team. And basically I had a jetpack strapped to my back and just learning all of the things. And in that journey, I will say, I began to collaborate with other people. I'm a big person. 3 pillars of my life are relationships, education, and execution. And the first pillar is relationships for a reason. I do believe that no one of us is better than all of us, and we are greater together. And so in that journey, I entered in different growth groups, one being Keller Williams Young Professionals. And hence is my introduction to Amanda Dahl. And so we got to know each other and actually use each other as peers and mentors, and sources of just support in growing our own worlds at the time. And then over that time, I invited her to coach our operations team. And then over that time, she asked for an invite into even greater capacity to join our world, at which the door was always unlocked. I didn't realize that it was completely open yet, but when she said it, we opened it real quick. And so it's been an amazing opportunity to kind of partner with her on the real estate enterprise or empire as it stands now. But we started by just meeting each other, growing a relationship, knowing each other in different facets of the business before we actually collaborated in its entirety. And my first introduction was KWIP. So I'm grateful for that community. Continue to be grateful for it every day. And so that's my side of it until today. And so I'll let Amanda.
So I was born in 1986. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah, so I'll start from real estate as well. So got in the business 2015, and I came in as an executive assistant to a guy who wanted to build a real estate team. 6.5 years later, we did that. We were about $125 million team. We did about 300 plus sides, and we were 30 people large. So I learned a lot in that process. And then we parted ways, which I think a lot of partnerships do. I'll say that in this too. I think it's really important to understand when you have served your time together and you should part ways on good terms versus staying in something that you grow resentful and a lot of turmoil builds in that regard, and then you burn a bridge. So that's one of my big leadership lessons in building businesses. But nonetheless, I left him in 2021 and I launched a coaching and consulting company. And I think at that time in my life, I had a lot to prove to myself. I'd had a history of building businesses for other people and growing in corporate ladders and things of that nature. And I was like, I think I can do this on my own. So I launched a coaching and consulting company, and I did that for about 4 years. And did that humble me? It was fantastic from all definitions of success standpoint. And yet it helped me identify a lot of gaps in my life. While I was making the most money I had ever made before, and I was growing a business, I was neglecting relationships. I was neglecting my health. And I realized very quickly what was important to me. And up until that point, I don't ever think I was faced, I know I was never faced with looking, like taking a hard look in the mirror in those areas. I was just running really fast, and I was always working in an environment with people and very competitive nature. And it was really cool, but I was just neglecting so many things in my life. So at the end of year 3, I guess really 2.5, 3, I looked up and I was like, well, what's important to you? And so I had to go internal on that and do a lot of self-reflecting. And I did. I actually minimized my roster in some capacity, and I cut out all the noise, and I just focused on what for me are the pillars of my life. And that's my health, my relationships, and my wealth. And so those were the 3 areas that I was focusing in on. And what I realized was relationships was an area that I was lacking. I had some amazing people in my life. I just wasn't pouring into them. And how could I from an empty cup, right? And so took some time to kind of reflect on that stuff and figure out what it was that I wanted. And in that, I realized, you know what? I don't want to grow Amanda Dahl Consulting to this massive empire. I've always been a student of any game that I've been in. And I truly believe that I've gotten to where I'm at because I've had amazing people both behind me and ahead of me. So I'm like, why? Like, in what world did I think I wanted to do this alone? And again, I think that goes back to just having to prove something to myself. And I proved it really quickly. So I was like, well, if I don't want to do this alone, what would I want to do? And so I created a very short list of people that I highly respected. And so on that list was Kaleo. But before we go there, how I met him. And he doesn't ever tell this story well, which I don't know why, because it had a major impact on me. It was 2000. And it was beginning of 2000, and somebody in Keller Williams Young Professionals was like, hey, listen, we've all been on lockdown. Why don't we do a summer Secret Santa?
2020.
What did I say?
2000, because I was 13 in 2000.
Sorry, 2020. 2020. So 2020, they're like, we've all been on lockdown from COVID. And so who wants to do a summer Secret Santa? If you're interested, sign up. And so a bunch of us signed up. And I had forgotten about it, to be honest with you. And then all of a sudden I get this package in the mail, and it's a necklace, and on it says grit and grace. Well, those were the 2 words that I had. The year prior, I'd picked grit, and the year that we were in, it was grace. And so I didn't know who it was. And I was like, somebody really went to some lengths to figure, or they know me really well. So I reached out to the organizer, which I shouldn't have done. And I was like, hey, you got to tell me who got me, because this was a very impactful gift. And so she told me. So I went and stalked him on Facebook, and I was like, I don't even know who this guy is. I'd never met him. Well, fast forward to that October, we were in Savannah for the Savannah YP launch. And he and Jordan Griggs showed up. And I remember when he walked into the bar that we were all in, I was like, that's him. I got to go say something to him. So I went up and I was like, I have no idea. He's like, I know who you are. And I was like, oh my gosh, you have no idea what an impactful gift that was, blah, blah, blah. So that was like, it was really cool to meet him after that had happened. And then we spent some time talking at that event. And what's interesting is he is a super connector, which I think is, but like, and you know, I'm all about receipts. Like if you're going to say you do the thing, like I need you to actually show me the receipt of you doing that. You can't just say that you do it. And he does. He really does when it comes to connecting people. And so that at that event, it was night 2 and we had this party that we were going to. And, you know, he and Jordan and I had kind of clicked pretty instantly and we're talking business and stuff. But then it was like 30 minutes into the event. He's like, Amanda, come here. You got to meet this person. Enter Tamika Barron into my life, who now happens to be one of my best friends. That was an introduction that Kaleo made because he was talking to her and he's like, you got to know Amanda because this is what she does. And so it's extremely interesting how he does that. So anyway, he just kept showing up like that in my life. And then I'd see him at this event or I'd see him at that event. And then we'd go months and not see each other. But then I'd get a call. Hey, it's Agent K just checking in on you. I'm like, what's going on, man? Or, hey, I had a question for you. Do you have a minute? And so he just kept staying in touch. And so now, fast forward to where we were at in the story, I'm like, the person at the top of that short list of people that I respected was him. And so I was like, hey, listen, if I wanted opportunity in your world, what would that look like? And he's like, the reaction was, what? Wait, huh? No. He's like, what? I didn't think really. And I was like, yeah, man, what does that look like? If money was no object, what would that look like? And so he's like, I don't know. You tell me, what would it look like? And I was like, well, how about I come up to Virginia for the summer and we'll date? I'll plug into the team because I knew my now counterpart Cheyenne.
He is a married man.
Yeah, well, I date Kova. Yeah, sorry. I was like, we'll date the opportunity. Sorry. And so I'd known Cheyenne and I had really grown to like her. And so I was like, hey, listen, I'll come up for the summer. It's 90 days with the team. Let's see if I can really will I fit into the culture? How is it? And so sure enough, I came up in May and July 31st, I left here and I was like, we're doing this. So I went back to Florida and I got some things in order and started looking for places up here. And that was it. Here we are.
There it is. The end.
Yeah.
And I think in that journey, it's a cool conglomeration or result of us partnering. But I think if you kind of listen to the story and we provide more details, it started with a seed of just a friendship and relationship in business in 2020, right? And the courage it took for her to say yes to relocate from a different state, right? And then the burden of responsibility it takes to invite somebody into your world that's willing to relocate. I mean, that trust and level of relationship doesn't develop, in a 30, 60, 90. All those are what those are for. This was a relationship that had been building for 4 years up to that point, right? And the part she never says, I always joke, was at the time that I met her, I hadn't partnered with Kova yet. Like we weren't there. I was a team leader that was in conversation about partnering with Kova. And I had 2 agents and an admin and we did 98 units. We were pretty good. But it was just like she was running a huge organization for another guy, a leader named Jeff. And I remember joking with her. I was like, man, you lucky Jeff got you. Cause if I had 6-figure salary, I'd hire you right now, but I don't got it. So, maybe one day. And that was like the running joke, like maybe one day. Right. And then she grew her own world. Right. And passively, it's like, she was doing her great. And I would never take away from somebody doing amazing. Right. But like she shared, there's things that aren't just subject to monetary value that are of significant importance to a human being living a fulfilling life, right? And so while I saw all her accolades and respected it and kept in touch, like she was coaching our operations business side for 6 months, that as she saw the back end, she knew that we wanted to like really grow, right? And it took her being in relationship. Then it wasn't just me. She was in relationship with my team for 6 months in a coaching capacity. She knew kind of the direction we were going. And she was like, hey, I know you guys want to grow. I know you guys got some changes coming. Like, I'd like to be part of that change. And the initial conversation was like, I'd love for you to be a part of that change. I didn't know it'd come from you, but this could be the best thing that ever happened to us. We weren't looking to hire another person, but when somebody like Amanda Dahl is in your lap, you figure out a way to make it work. And so we've been on a journey of business dating for 3 months.
Well, it sounds like long-term dating first, right?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that kind of your, as a consultant?
Long-term relationshiping, business dating for 3 months that converted to a business relationship where she actually moved here for the last quarter and started transitioning her personal life, and then full on rocking and rolling since Jan 1. And so that's kind of been the commitment, right? Like we're like in the same boat. We're running the same race. She's integrated onto the team. She always tells people that, I operate in 2 places. No, she operates in Virginia Beach and she visits other places, but we allow her to visit them whenever she wants, right? She's been an amazing addition and we love to have her. And we're still growing. We got a lot to learn, but I think we got the right leadership people in the right seats to figure it out, and that's what I'm excited about.
So you call me a Disney prince. I actually on stage played Gaston, so like the villain. But then last summer I played Prince Eric. So I'll sing and dance for you guys, but I'm living my best life. Community theater.
I would say, like, never know. Trust me, I've seen you sing online, and I've seen you. I already knew that. That's how I already know, man. I already knew that.
So in that Disney world, we say, hey, there's a prince, princess meet each other, and then they live happily ever after, right?
Mm-hmm.
You guys are in the happily ever after, and it's work, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we're happily ever after. We're in the beginning phase. Like, think of it as when people date, or like when you're on your best behavior, when you're at your listing appointment, you're suited and booted, you're ready to go for the appointment. Like, you're going to pick her up, for the date or whatever. Like, today you might just send the Uber, right? Depends how long your relationship together. But, it's kind of, we're in the honeymoon phase of like getting to know each other's personality. She's vibing with our leadership group. We're vibing with her. And we're not oblivious of the real work that has to be done. And I think that we're learning each other. Like in full transparency, some of the leadership conversation is, how do I show up in better leadership for her, right? So she's coming in, and it's one of those leadership dynamics. Like, I think I'm a pretty good leader. I believe in myself and what I've grown in my history, but I respect her leadership ability so much that I think that I left it as a leadership gap that, she doesn't need to be led. She's going to figure it out. And so we voiced some conversation. It's not like I need to be in front of her and telling what to do, but there are leadership conversations that need to be had in order for us to grow together. And it's us leading each other. Like in my actual, relationship with my wife, like people would say, I'm the leader. I don't know that I am. My wife leads us at home significantly more than I can lead in the household. And so I follow her lead, and I need that. And people would be like, he's such a demonstrative and outgoing guy. And yet I submit to how she leads the household, right? It's because I know that she brings more value there. And so in my growing of the business, although I think very highly of myself, and I think you need to be a certain level of crazy and gritty to go grow something big, I learned early that no one of us is smarter than all of us. And there are going to be strengths and weaknesses that I have to acknowledge. And my best opportunity to fill those gaps are going to be through other people that I know, like, trust and respect, and think can operate in those levels at a much higher level. And so I have some strengths, but there are many places in the business that Amanda is a significantly better operator than I. And not only than that, but she actually loves that part of the business, right? And so we're all finding our lanes on which parts of the businesses or the business we can grow at the highest level, and which ones do we have to suck up and run anyway for the time being until we grow it to the level we need. And so the leadership journey has been amazing. And I've been challenged with having 3 other high-level leaders in our leadership circle. But I love this challenge. And so it's been one that I'm embracing every day. They got me, killing leadership books and podcasts to make sure I stay up on my game to be ready to lead them in the right way, because I don't take it lightly. But it's been an exciting opportunity for me to self-reflect on how I can be better for them too. But we are in a great place. We've hit our first quarter goals in terms of lag measures. We're working on some efficiencies. And I truly am just like, they get a version of me that is a little direct and hard-nosed because we're in the boat together. And like, when you play basketball, like Draymond Green is like, nobody wants to play against him. Patrick Beverly, like defensive, like guys that are in your face. And I'm kind of like that on the team, but I think they also know on the back end that like, there's nobody you want in your corner either pushing you, because they know that what I want is what they want. And I only win if they win. So I want them to win at such a big level that we all win together. And it's been cool to kind of learn how to lead each other in leadership together, for sure.
And what he says about the leadership challenge is common for really great leaders, in my opinion. Like I've got a roster of, I don't know, 20 people right now, and all of those leaders are struggling with something in leadership. And it's interesting because the way the conversation came about, I actually found something in myself. I'd been on my own for 4 years, and sometimes this can happen when you're going at it alone. I see this like single agents or maybe agents with an admin. I'll see this sometimes where it's like they stopped allowing themselves to be led. So like, oh, I hired a coach and I got this that I needed from my coach, and now we're running really fast and we're hitting all our goals. Okay, we're good. And it's like, well, no, the second that you do that, you literally stop your growth and you're just where you're at if you're not going to continue to do it yourself. And I can assure you, I've never pushed myself as hard as any coach has pushed me, whether it be a physical coach or it be a spiritual coach or it be a business coach. And so the way that conversation came about is we were in a leadership meeting and he had us listen to a podcast, and he's like, write down your ahas and let's discuss them at our next leadership meeting. And so my biggest aha was, and the way that it came out, I could see how it was taken, but I was like, at this point in my life, I'm not being led. And it's because I haven't allowed myself to be led. What he heard was, I'm not leading you, which I think was great, because that's again another testament to his character, where I'm someone who owns it at the highest level, and so is Kay. And so Kay went super internal and was like, what I hear is I'm not leading her. But really what I was trying to do was own it and say, I haven't put myself in a position, because I truly believe that whatever we put out in the universe is what we attract. I'm clearly not putting the message out that I want to be led in the universe, because I'm not attracting any leaders who are approaching me wanting to lead me. And so I was like, I need to fix that in myself, because I've been going at it alone. And, sometimes you can get caught up in the rat race. And like, I think one of the biggest challenges as a leader or someone who truly wants to be a student of the game is, how can I be in the same room? Like I use this example all the time. I've been with KW 10 years. I've taken career visioning 12 times. It's not because I'm slow. It's because literally I'm at a different place in my life every time, or I need to hear something different. And then when I go into that room, I already know what the content is. And so for me, I'm like, how do I listen for something that I don't know that I need to be listening for, but I probably need to hear? Like, that's a really important question. And so I know a lot of high level leaders struggle with that as well. So I love that he went I love that he went to a place where he wanted to own it. And it just is a true testament to how we show up with each other too. Cause I was like, no, okay. What I meant was, I need to be doing things to, like, I never came to you and said, hey, listen, you're not leading me, or I would really appreciate you leading me. Like, I never did that. So I wasn't pointing the finger at you. And it's cool that you stepped up and wanted to own it anyway.
I just want to call out a few maybe bold laws or Keller Williams isms.
Yeah.
Or like being learning based. Okay, you're talking about you're devouring books, podcasts, teach people how to treat you. And maybe that's not where it started, but it's like, hey, like, this is what I need, right? More leadership, more guidance. Is it more vision? Is that what you felt like you were lacking?
Yeah, it's interesting because we had our first meeting and he was like so good. He comes in and he's like, so I'm so excited to be here with you. And I'm like, on the one hand, it's like, okay, it's you. But on the other hand, it's like, I so appreciate that you're taking this so seriously. And he's like, I got a list of questions. He's like, but I don't even want to go through those. Like, let's just open up with, how has Virginia been treating you? What was interesting about that, though, is that's what's so cool about these things. If you just put yourself in a position to receive whatever's happening and have no ego, and truly two people who want to be in this meeting. And while we may not know what this meeting is going to be yet, we're going to figure it out. By him asking me that question, I started to give him answers. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love it. I love that I'm in a routine. I love my gym. I love the people who come up to me at my gym. I love my nutrition shop. I love the friends I've been making. But I hadn't taken time in the last, when did I move here? November? To even sit back and think, like, how has Virginia been treating me? And it's so great that he's right. I've been operating out of here. I mean, I haven't even been back to Florida since Christmas. And so it's interesting. I didn't know that I needed to be asked that question. And then when I was, it gave me an opportunity to reflect. And so that led into something else, and that led into something else. But ultimately, what we got to the bottom of in that meeting was essentially that, like, there are things, like, he's a big reason. He was the initial reason, but he still serves a big part of the reason why I came up here. And one of the things that, because he's got it and I've got it, we just hadn't taken enough time to figure out, was how do we spend more time together in a business capacity? Like, what does that look like? And I guess, and it's so funny because my love language is quality times and acts of service. Like those are my top two. And so what I felt was I wasn't getting enough quality K time, but I also knew, like, I'm a high level leader, so I know I'm in a million things. And if I'm going to give my time to someone, it better be worthy of my time. So I didn't want to show up and be like, hey, I need more K time. But what do I really need more K? Like, what am I going to do with that K time? So I felt this responsibility to figure out what I wanted. Like, if I'm going to ask you for your time away from your family, away from your kids, away from the other projects you're working on, I better have a good reason why. And it better serve a purpose. It can't just be, I want more time on your calendar. And so I think that was probably the hesitation in really being forthcoming in that, and why I didn't probably present that sooner.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to figure out different ways to bring the conversation to a level to help the everyday agent or the person growing their team. And so I want to circle back on some of those. I think the key tenet or principle is relationships, right? Like who, not how, rocket fuel. We get all of these books and these recommendations that dictate or direct us to saying, hey, go find the right people. And yet it's like, well, how do you find the right people? Like, how do you do that? Right. And I do believe in the power of who, but I also believe that the first who, or the most important who, is you. Right. And so we say this all the time, but like, who do you have to be to attract other high level leaders or high talent? Right. A talent attracts B talents. B talent attracts C talent. B talent attracts D talent. D talent's not attracting A talent. High performers want to be surrounded by high performers. And I think that in my leadership journey, I have now entered a stage of working being grateful for what I have created and trying to figure out in a very positive way the work-life balance integration, because I would also say, not to pat myself on the back or to throw it in, like my work-life balance is probably better than 90% of the big business operators I know. And so I have some high-level people in my world where I really operate between 9 and 2. And for the most part, after 2, very rarely am I doing any extracurricular business things, unless it's on my own, just brainstorming and visionary things, right? I don't take calls on weekends. Like it's not something that interrupts my family life outside of that. And I have 5 kids under 7. So I've valued that. And what I've discovered is we're in a moment of building. And so while I love that, I brought in a Cheyenne Penn, a Megan Anderson, and Amanda Dahl, and even some of our top producers like Taylor Bagnick and Kathleen Gamble that I believe to be current or high-level leader potential, like in the future, if they choose to be. And what I realized is like, okay, you played Division I basketball at the Naval Academy. You won a gold medal in the military. You're in the Hall of Fame in high school and college. Like, at what point did you just think to yourself, I'm good? Like, you always wanted to be coached hard, to be trained hard, and to be pushed to your fullest extent. And what happened was, at least in my small estimation, and this is just now verbal transparency that I don't know actually, I'll be like, I think that I put high-level leaders in great position, and then I sat back. And I wasn't giving the coaching, the training, the push, the drive. It was like, I finally got what I attracted, the people that I know to be high talent. Now let them be great. Right. And there is a difference between managing and directing versus equipping and empowering. And I think, and this is a self-reflection, that my version of equipping and empowering has been lazy leadership. And so I think I've recognized that, and not that it's bad leadership, but by the estimation of what is the best that I could give, I know I can give them so much more. And so once I realized that, like, I've really been excited about the opportunity to show up bigger in their world. And whether that's weekly leadership meetings with them one-on-ones, not just group meetings, whether it's pushing on different KPIs or just being more present, I'm committed to that because they've granted me the opportunity to have this amazing life and work-life balance that if I was going to carve out time away from my family, which I have some time to carve out, the most important people I'd want to do it for is them. Right. I would love to do it for them. And I think some of it is she never asked because she was like, he has like, no, like, I would love for you that fulfilled. I would love to show up for you the way that you want somebody to show up. And so it's been a cool leadership dichotomy. But the main thing is like, as you're growing your world, do you need an agent? Do you need admin? Do you need a partner? Do you need this or that? At the end of the day, you need to attract people. And so are you the kind of person that people will be attracted to? Like, that's a thing. Like you gotta self-reflect that. Are you of moral fiber? Do you have values? Are you a hard driver? Are you results oriented? Or do you just want to have a good friend that you can talk to? I think that there are levels to how you want to showcase yourself and how you show up in a relationship and in business. And you got to get very clear on what is your value to a partnership or organization or to in any capacity. What's your value to bring in an admin? Like, how are you going to show up for them? Why should they join you? What's your value to an agent? Is leads the only answer? Like, how are you going to show up for them? And then what's your value to a partner? Can you convince a partner to split something with you, like X, Y, or Z? Like, I think that we underestimate who we need to be. And you got to get, there's a difference between cockiness and confident. But if you're going to be a driver, it better be highly confident and close to cocky. Like, you just got to really believe in yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, why would anybody in this world believe in you? Like, I just don't understand that. And so self-belief is a big thing. And I don't think I'm perfect, but Amanda knows, like, you give me a direction and a result I need to drive. I believe I can do it. And I believe I can do it better than most if I choose to do it and I want to do it. And they make me want to show up for them. So I'm excited on what this next 6 months is going to look like.
Love that. Thank you.
It's all real. It's all super real. That's one of the reasons I decided to join him, is because he's just transparent. Like, and that's how it's not beautiful all the time. It's not. I was joking before we hit record. He's like, what did you ask me? Oh, and tell me the amazing reasons why you decided to join Kova. I was like, yeah, I was contemplating those this morning. And, I say that tongue in cheek, but the reality is there's some days where, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, if I'm going to have to argue with someone, or if I'm going to have to get pushback from someone, I want it to be them. And I think it's also necessary. Like, it's something that's super humbling, because we all come in with great ideas. I mean, we all are learning based. We all do all of those things. But at the end of the day, having a team to bounce around. Like, I remember growing Amanda Dahl Consulting alone. And it's like, I used to have to pay thousands of dollars. And I've had some amazing coaches in my life, but ultimately for me to get on a 30-minute call with them once a week and bounce all my crazy problems off them and expect them to like help me solve them. No, you need rooms like we're going to be in tomorrow with a whiteboard and markers, and we're all committed to sitting around that table until it's done. Like, there's no better feeling, in my opinion, than that in business. And so, yeah, I have said this a couple of times, even on what I felt like was the most exhausting day or my worst performance day, I still go home with the biggest smile on my face, and I want to do it all over again tomorrow. And like, not a lot of people get that.
Mm-hmm. So maybe an analogy of like a solid workout, where it's like, I've worked so hard, I'm exhausted, and let's do it again tomorrow.
That's exactly it. Like, sometimes you're fighting through the entire thing, and sometimes you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't. I was actually saying that this morning. I was working out with a friend of mine, and we were doing weighted lunges. And I was like, I don't want to do these. I don't want to do these. I don't want to do these. And I said it through the whole entire session of doing them. And then I was so glad that I did. Then I ended with sprints. I don't want to do these. And then when I got done, I was like, man, I'm so glad I did that workout. Let's go do it tomorrow. Same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think relationships, and then, for agents, communication, like you have to communicate through a transaction from start to finish. More, clarity provides confidence, right? No lack of clarity provides a lot of uncertainty and questions, right? And so the more you're committed to communicating at a high level, right? And committing to a high level means not just communicating, but committed to understanding or trying to figure out the other perspective as a big piece. And so, a lot of people have negative connotations with words. I was an English major. And so conflict, right, is a negative connotation, but conversation is a word that's easier. And yet the word con in Spanish, its root word is with, right? I'm with you in this conversation, or with you in this conflict. So, the ability to have hard conversations, like even when Amanda says something, I'm like, cool. You said that and that meant something to you. I'm going to tell you how I received it. I know it's not how you meant it for, but I want you to understand my perspective on how I received it so that we can get to the middle of it, right? Fierce Conversations is a great fundamental book for leadership, but what you say and what somebody receives is completely different. And oftentimes people will say something and believe with the best intentions that what they intended is true, and it's not, because what you say and what I understand is different. And so committed to the time it takes to make sure that you're both on the same page, because oftentimes you can be communicating quite differently, even with the same words or the same sentences. And so Amanda knows I'm very much like, this is what you said. This is how I took it. Is that what you meant? Because I need to make sure, like, because this is my response. If you didn't mean it that way, I don't need to give you my response because then it's inapplicable. But like, I want to make sure. And so there's just a way to make sure that you understand your people. And I know that by understanding them better, it'll give me a better opportunity to lead them at a higher level, which will then drive a bigger result. Right. So.
Yeah, I'm hearing ask, not assume, right? It's
Yeah.
easy to assume of like, hey, my past experience, if you know me, right, and we're in the same room, so of course you know everything that I've ever gone through. False, right? Like, we know each other at a certain level and like we get a little deeper, but it's like, you don't know what triggers me from when I was 6, right? And so you say something to me and like all of a sudden either the tone or like you're saying a word choice is like, hey, that word to me means X, Y, and Z. And I can assume and hop into action, right?
Absolutely.
Or ask and be like, is that what you intended?
Yeah. And I think that's super key to developing relationships, right? In collaboration. And so, yeah, I love that. What else, Spence? What are the people saying they need some value on, man? What else can we show up for? This is the behind the scenes, right? So we're just
right. For me, I'm curious about stories. Amanda, as an operator, were you selling real estate? Doing transactions?
Well, so I got licensed 6 months in to being the executive assistant. And then I did 6 or 7 literally transactions. And the only reason I did them is because I got to a point in that growth journey where I became the director of sales for all intents and purposes. And so I was like running sales meetings. I was running script practice and role play. And there were a couple of senior agents on the team that were like, essentially, honey, stay in your lane. Why would we coach with you? Why would we do any of that? And I was like, I'm going to show these guys. So I'm going to go take some. So I started bringing in business. And then I was like, I want to take that listing. I want to do that. I want to work with that buyer. So, but outside of that, no, I knew respectfully very early on that I did not want to work with the consumer. I like working with the real estate agent, helping develop them, helping do all of that stuff. And so, no, I kind of stayed away from that.
Yeah. And I think there's part of that. Like, it's a good, healthy thing to like have maybe an ego drive of like, I want to prove to myself I can do it. Right. And maybe prove to other people I can do this, test the waters and be like, that's actually not my strength zone. Right. Let me get back to where my strengths lie, operate there. I'm curious. So here's what it brings up as a question of like that script and role play, you're leading them, right? And as agents, they're like, you've never sold a house. How can you teach me anything? Is that what I heard? That's what I heard. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
So then is that, I guess, the truth? Could you teach somebody something that you've never done? If that's your strength zone, could you coach them to a level that you've never attained yourself? If you're that operator coach?
That's an absolute great question. So I think there's a difference, first of all, between coaching and consulting. And I think there's a lot of people, especially if you're learning based, that can regurgitate information. I think there's something about what you can share. So could I regurgitate information from an MREA book? Could I regurgitate information from a listing appointment that I attended with Jeff? Absolutely. And I could do it. There's 95% of people that could take exactly what I taught them and go do it. There's something different though when I can teach you because I sat in there. I'm probably going to have different things to say to you, different points to make, different perspective because I was in that chair and I felt the anxiety when I was handling the objection to a real seller, or I was walking through their home and I said something that I thought was helpful and was actually offensive and I had to talk my way out of it. Or when I had to call and actually have that price reduction conversation versus listening to Jeff's experience. Because don't get me wrong, I could regurgitate that all day long and it would probably be enough information. But I'll tell you that a huge piece of the foundation of my success would be because I'm really good at telling stories that I have lived through, experiences that I have had. That's the ultimate thing, right? That's why we say there are some things that you just can't rush. You take a guy who goes to 4 years of college for finance and then you put him on Wall Street versus the guy that's been working at 20 years. Like who's got more wisdom? It's the wisdom that you're paying for. So can you teach someone? I truly believe that. Respectfully, we see that every day, don't we? In our education calendar in the market center, people can teach anything. but actually coaching them through something that's going to be impactful and be lasting, there is something to be said about the wisdom that comes with that.
Kind of earned it through, and then that maybe back to your show me the receipts, right? Like, have you gone through this yourself?
Yeah.
And the level, right? So I believe you could probably teach a new agent anything because they don't know any better. But when you get like my roster now is all seasoned people. It's people that have been doing this for years, that own organizations, brokerages, multiple brokerages for that matter. And so like the conversations that we're having are not just like, what percentage is your net profit margin? It's like, how do we, like literally, how do we go 5 levels deep on this thing? Because listen, I'm closing 7% of my database business. How do I get that to 10%? Like I can't teach that from a book. Like here's trials and tribulations of how we did it 3 teams ago, or how we're doing it in our real estate team right now, or what and you know, Jeff Glover says this on a regular basis. The reason that I can stand on stage and say what I say is because I've literally been on a listing appointment 2 days ago, and this is what the seller said to me in this market. A lot different than someone teaching you a listing presentation who hasn't taken a listing in 5 years. So yeah, there is a difference.
I think it goes back to the old sports analogy, you know. Can you not be a good player and be a good coach? If you never have played and still be a good coach. Like I think history has shown that there are plenty of coaches that are pretty good coaches that never played, right? And then you can see in sports media and everything, like more players are now becoming the talking faces of media because they have the proof of concept of having been there, right? And so I think that there can be truth to both. I think that in real estate and agents and people subconsciously, like it just is more impactful or empowering to have a proof of concept. Meaning like, don't just tell me what you did. Could you show me what you did? And I think that we oftentimes attribute that to doing the actual thing, which is probably the most impactful. Like I should make a impact theory thing on here, but like the most impactful thing is that you've done it and you know exactly how it could be done your way. And you can talk and be a testament to that. But could, and I don't know if she sold real estate or not, but could Taylor Kerrigan in Jeff Glover's world coach and train an agent to be productive? Maybe she's never sold a house, but she's ran an organization with 1,000 agents and built out all the processes and systems. So her receipt is just different. I never sold a house, but I have a track record of 500 agents getting into production in this time frame, right? So her receipt is different, right? Could Amanda coach an agent that they just started recruiting with Jeffrey Borum previously? And they'd be like, well, why would I listen to Amanda? And Amanda can say, well, I was the executive assistant to somebody that took 10 listings a month, and I did all the admin and paperwork. So I know exactly what is necessary for you to win at a high level. And while he can close the appointment better, I know all of the details on how we got to that appointment in the first place. So if you think you're as good as you want to be, I can get you to the appointment. Can you close? Like, so I think receipts are different. The most impactful is I've done it. I've been there. I have lessons learned I can show you. The second is, how do you get your receipts in a different way, right? Like, can I go coach wealth building? I don't know if a millionaire would listen to me, but I coached under Brett Tanner for 6 months to a year where I was in his world and learned super high level conversations and was in rooms with billionaires, you know, talking about different economic frameworks and things like that. So could I teach it? I could probably teach it. But it's better when I understood the economics. Now that I'm driving my own world, like all day long, I can teach you how to the steps to getting to become a $50 million team. Right. My next goal is to be $100 million team. And while I can teach some people to do it, I know that my first step for me is I want to be able to have done it already. But I know Jeff Glover, I'm in his world. I know Brett Tanner, they did more than 100 million. I know Daniel Dixon, they pour into me all the time. So I can teach you on what are some of the characteristics and traits of $100 million teams. But for me, the most impactful is, have you done it? The second most is like, who have you been around, coached by, or what result have you driven that still had the result that they wanted, even if it wasn't you doing it, right? And so that's kind of my premise.
I think there's a couple more factors too, because I think it depends in different stages of your life. Like, we run into this in coaching a lot. Like, I'm 38 years old, I'm not married, and I don't have kids. So the young woman that wants to find her matchmaker and have children, she may see, like, I want to be coached by the person who's actually living the life that I want, right? Go find the person that's doing what you're doing and be coached by them. Doesn't mean, I mean, I'm an amazing aunt, so I got a different receipt, and I feel like I show up for them, like their mom shows up for them as well. So like it's just different levels. But there are some people who are just going to see the person who has what they want and who's done what they've done, and they want that individual, which is okay. But it doesn't mean other people aren't necessarily qualified. I guess it would depend on the person, because some people are like, no, I don't care. Listen, you've done this and I can appreciate that. And I've seen what you've done in your world. And while it may not be the same thing that I've done, it's still to the level in which I would do it. So I appreciate you. And then there's some people who just don't want to, and that's okay.
And I'll kind of close the loop on that. Like being led and receiving leadership or lessons or knowledge isn't just linear, like somebody above you. I learn from my agents. I learn from my leadership team. I learn from my friends. I learn from my family every single day, right? And you got to be open to receiving those lessons of life every single day, right? I learn from my children, right? And so like the idea that, you know, there's probably a thing you want to drive a result for that has some very specific coaching, right? But every day in life, we have the opportunity to learn. And I don't have to be in agreement with you to learn from the advice or the offerings you have. And yet be very careful who you're listening to, right? Because social media has allowed more people to be louder than ever. And that's okay if they would like to voice their opinions and things, but understand that like there is a certain level of responsibility on you to vet who you
Yes.
give your attention to, right? And so that.
Agreed.
One more, maybe just I want to just understand inside of your head, okay? You've got this, it just seems, you know, use, communicate it and display it in such a way of like, it just makes sense for you to team up with people, right?
Mhm.
As you've gone through each of these levels. Amanda said he's a connector, right? So like, maybe it's, what's the water that you swim in? How do you see the world that way?
I mean, if we're going to be in the business of people, then we need to be in love with getting to know people, in my opinion. And some of this is like where we come from and who we are, right? I come from a background where my mom had me at 16, right? I had 3 to 4 stepdads growing up. I was always the stepchild, right? I have beautiful twin sisters and a little brother on my biological father's side. There's a family of 4 kids, right, that grew up. But in my personal life, like I grew up the outsider, right? And so I was the other kid that was first, and then, you know, spent some time with my sister's dad. And when they got divorced, he'd come back and check on them. But I was like, hey, you raised me too, right? And then my brother's dad and those things. And I don't fault that. I was significantly loved at a high level by my mom, aunt, and grandma. But I think what it allowed me to do is like, I really cared about getting to know people because I wish people cared to get to know me. Right. And I think I felt left out. And so what ends up happening is like, I use the word love freely. And a lot of people say, well, you don't love people. Like, no, you don't love people. I do, unfortunately. And I'm open to loving people more and then being hurt, because I'd rather get hurt than do the hurting. I know it's a weird thing, but like, I've already loved and been hurt. I've been a part of 4, 5, 6 different families, like, you know, and now I get the benefit of having my own. And so when I meet people, I really do care about who they are, where they come from, what, you know, what value they can bring, what I can bring them. And so it's not a trick. It's like, I'm just genuinely interested in meeting more people, because I believe that if people can experience the level of love that I get to experience today, like the world would be a better place. And so I take the time to get to know people, whether you're a brand new agent or a new agent. I just went to Tampa and did a speaking engagement. There's some new agents like, hey, and I offer everybody my time. I say, hey, here's my Zoom, schedule it. If you show up, I'll show up. Right. Because I love when people want to show up for themselves. And it's not about me just being in relationship or in rooms with people that are doing bigger. It's about being a leader and being a ladder. How many people can I help up along the way? And sometimes I meet people and I tell them, I say, hey, I know you're super grateful that we're in this relationship and you're growing. I just want you to know, like, you're going to be great. Don't forget about me when you make it to the top. You know what I'm saying? Because the more people you help get their things, the more people want to help you get your thing, right? It's the law of reciprocity. And so there were plenty of engagements with Amanda and I over the course of those years of introducing her to a great friend or connecting her with a key person with an opportunity or these things. And I didn't receive any monetary contribution from that. Tamika didn't pay me to introduce them. Brett Tanner didn't pay me for Amanda to be his KW Wealth instructor for a year, right? Like, these things are things I did because I thought it would benefit her. And sometimes they do and don't, but they did. And she always remembered, like, man, Kay really hooked me up. And in the end, when the time came, the world said, hey, your coaching is an organization. Why don't you just help them take it to the next level? And then she said, hey, I want to join you on your cause. And like, that's what it is. And so in giving, you're always receiving. Now, I get the waste of time and the economies of don't waste, like, but at some point, I'm just a person that knows, like, you'll find out quickly, like a 36, if somebody's going to waste your time. But in the beginning, we're only here. And I got this from, it's a podcast. And it was the conversation about why would you love so hard if you know that people are going to hurt you, meaning agents can leave you at any time. And then there's another person was like, why would you love so hard? So one person said, I don't love freely because I know that people are going to hurt me. So they have to earn my love at the highest level and blah, 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 blah. And there was another leader that said, well, I love freely knowing that we only have a set amount of time. And the story that was shared was that the reason why she loves that way is because she lost a child. And her experience was we only have a finite amount of time. And so if I'm going to show up on this world that we call Earth, why wouldn't I give the best version of myself to everybody in the limited amount of time we have? And if I were to go tomorrow, Spencer's experience with me in that day that he met me and the day that I left would be a great one. And so her leadership style for agents is I love them despite the notion that they're going to leave, because I know that it isn't the business that is going to be my legacy. It's going to be who I stand for and who I am and showing up. And so she was able to verbalize it in a way that I just show up because I want people to get the best version of me in the time that they had. And hopefully the universe will reward me in the end with people wanting to look out for me as much as I hope they know that I'll look out for them. And so I tried to sum that up in a quick manner, but that's just how I live. You know, my wife, there was a phase where me and my wife were going to weddings all the time. And she met me post college and post my first military tour. And she goes, babe, I've been with you for 5 years. You have been the best man or groomsman in like 7 weddings. I don't even know these people. Right. And I'm like, babe, he was on my basketball team, or we served together on our first ship, or I knew him at this point. And she was like, why does everybody think you're so important like I do? Like, I don't understand. And I was like, and I tried to quantify it. Then I'm like, it's not that we have the strongest relationship today. It's that in the small amount of time and space that the world let us share time together, that we made a big impact on each other. And they know I still have love for them. And so, yes, I'm going to be in that wedding. And yes, we have to go again. So like, you know, it's just one of those things that in leadership there, you know, there's no love without leadership, man. So there it is.
And maybe you feel that that's your own superpower. That's what I'd say. You show up with love.
Yes.
Maybe that's what it is. I'm still trying to figure it out, but I'm happy to be on this journey with you guys, and privileged that you even had us on this call. So whatever we can bring to the table, we're here for it.
Amanda, what's your superpower?
I would always say that it's communicating. I think I've always been someone who's transparent and I think I'm very direct and clear in my communication, and I've gotten good over the years, really good over the years, I think, of extracting information from people with questions. So I would say communication. I'm very, very, very strong in communication, and I really like to communicate with people, but I think it's like what they don't say, what they're saying when they don't say it. So that, I don't know if it's a superpower. I don't know if
Listen between the lines,
any
right?
superpowers, but it's something I'm good at.
Okay, what do you think? Is she right?
Oh, she does a great job in communication. And I
Would
think
you give her a different superpower?
Well, I think it's a little bit of an intangible. I think it's not just communication. It's the manner in which she communicates, right? And so I think that words mean something, but there's studies with people smarter than me. It's tonality, it's body language, it's all of this. And I think when we use communicate, we just talk about talk. And I think Amanda has a very unique way of communicating with the entire communication spectrum that allows quick connection, quick to trust, like ease of responsiveness, and she creates a space where she's able to use her own analytical and operations brain to dissect and get to things. But it's because like when Amanda speaks, the energy in which, the tonality, the way she communicates with her voice and her body, it almost compels you to open up. Like it's like when somebody smiles at you and says, have a good day, like you're like, hey, have a good day, right? Like no matter what state you're in, when Amanda is communicating at the highest level, it immediately lifts your level up of just energy in life. So I think it's not just that she communicates, it's the level and pathways of all of the communication things that she uses to make that connection.
We are recording this, right? I need that so that I can put it somewhere.
No, I'll validate it too, that I've seen as we've had our, interactions over, as you coaching me, whether through, business planning clinic, YP, or we've had some one-on-ones where, because I can trust, like there's a competence that you bring, right? And it's not like you're asking a question, and I guess there's part of me that like trusts that if I give you the answer, then you're like, okay, I can take that data and get you from where you are today to where you want to get to, right? So there's that level of competence. And so I can have confidence in you, competence and confidence. But then there's caring, right? Like your heart is in it. So wherever you show up, that's what I've seen is like you care. And so it's not, just detached, right? Communicating just for communication's sake. Right. But like the effectiveness comes from, I can trust you, and I guess feel connected to you.
That's thanks, guys.
Words to that.
I love it. Yeah. All right, Spencer, this has been amazing.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. If you need anything else from us, I know we got the big show next week. And so you got tons of background info. If there's any like targeted questions or areas you specifically want to dive in, or things you want us to make sure we specifically share on the live show, just send it over in advance and we'll be ready to rock and roll.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day. Enjoy your weekend.